So tonight we're going to tie the Zug Bug, first developed in the first half of the 20th century, I believe sometime around the 1930s. It's meant to imitate a cased caddis fly. Caddis flies are found in mountain streams. They're an indicator of good clear water. Trout love them. But it also can be used as an attractor fly because of what we tie it with. The tail is actually tied from the fibers on the peacock sword, not peacock herl, but you can see that there's a lot more blue and a lot more color in these, and the tips are different from the regular peacock herl. The body, again, is tied with peacock herl, which we've been using quite a bit lately. Ribbing is tied with oval tinsel. That you can also use fine wire for it to do that. The throat or the legs are tied with some hen hackle. Some people use partridge, a variety, you can use just about anything, pheasant. And then the casing on the top is going to be tied with, we're using mallard flank, but any mottled feather. I believe the original one pattern called for wood duck. So we tie on get our thread going. Get this up a little bit, there we go. And we'll tie that back to the bend of the hook. Put a nice thread base on. Then what we're going to use is we're going to take 3 or 4 of these sword fibers, and you can just pick them off, pull them off. Make sure the ends are fairly even. We want it about half the length of the hook, and so we'll put that in. Do kind of a pinch wrap so that we can keep it on top. And then you can, if you don't tie it too tight to begin with, you can adjust it the way you want as far as length. And then we'll go ahead and see if I can get that to stay better. And then we'll just cut these off. So you've got those fibers sticking out for your tail. We're going to add our tinsel. And so we'll put the tinsel on. And then we'll take, say, 3 or 4 of these pieces of peacock herl. Again, you've got the end that is got the whites on it that go back to the stem. You've got the tips that stick out. We want to even those up, and of course break the last bit off because it's fairly, the tips are pretty fragile. We'll tie the tips in. And then we are going to wrap this up to the front of the hook, a little bit behind the eye of the hook. Then we're going to take these. I like to twist them to kind of make a rope. That kind of helps keep them together. I know that earlier we showed you a way where you can wrap them forward, pushing the thread forward as you go. You got to be real careful that you don't grab the tip of the point of the hook, because it can, as you get about halfway, you got to twist them a little more. I find that if you twist them, it seems to make it a little bit stronger. And of course, this stuff is fairly fragile. Then when we get to the front, we'll tie it off. A couple of wraps, couple in front. And then you can either cut them or break them off, whatever you like. Now we're going to take our tinsel and we're going to wrap it forward, trying to keep the segments fairly even. And again, then we can cut that off. So we've got our tail body and stuff. This would be a pretty good place if you wanted to put a half hitch in so that we don't lose everything on the next step. We're going to take a piece of this hen hackle, and we're going to make what I call a beard, but I guess technically it represents legs. So we can turn our fly upside down. There's different ways of doing this. For me, the easiest is to pull off a bunch like that. Kind of even up the tips. You want it so that the tips come down to about where just about where the point of the hook is. And we're going to give it a loose wrap, a couple loose ones, make sure that this is all on the bottom, a tight wrap or two, cut off the butt ends of that. We can turn this back right side up. Another couple little wraps here. And then now we're going to take our mallard flank and we are going to pull all that fuzzy stuff off the bottom, off the hook, off of it. So you got it like that. We're going to take this and put it right where it is starting to, and then we want to make sure that it's on top, kind of pointing to the back. Give it a couple good wraps. Cut this off. Give a little bit of a head. Give it a whip finish. Again, you can do that whip finish twice, makes it a little bit stronger. And you don't have to pull quite so hard on the first one. Sometimes you'll break it on this thin thread if you do it, pull too hard on that first one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to trim this. I don't have it perfectly on top here, as you can see, a little bit off. We're going to come down about yay far, probably about a third of the hook shank, and we're going to trim that off. And then, so now you have your, and you can see I have it just a little bit, not perfectly on top. And again, you can fix it, fish this like we fish our other nymphs we've talked about under an indicator. You can actually swing these in a stream. So you get the current and you swing it across, the stream, cast across and swing it back towards your side. And you could also use it as a trailer or a leader with another wet fly there. So that's how we do that. So now you have 3 hooks. One is one of them is smaller than the other 2. So we start with the larger ones. I'm going to put a little bit of head cement on there. Take the hole out. So use the larger one first. Let's put those in our vise and get our thread base on. So wrap our thread all the way back to the bend of the hook. Okay, so that looks a little out of focus. There we go. All right, so now we're going to take our sword, your sword section, and take 3 or 4 of those off. The original one calls for 3, but I've even seen people do more. You want those tips nice and even. And again, we want them about half the length of the shank of the hook. And if we do a loose wrap or 2, then we can adjust them however we want. And if they're a little long or a little short, it's not going to kill anything. Give it a couple good wraps. So let's go ahead and tie in the tail.
For proportions on this tail, what do we want, Joe? About half the length of the hook?
Yeah, about half the length of the hook.
Seeing some pretty long ones.
And again, if you do that loose wrap, you can adjust that. If it's a little long or a little short, it's not as big a deal. You could pretend you're Mike Mott and trim them if you get them too long. I like the natural end. I like the nice tapered natural look of the ends. If you cut them, they don't look that way, but you know, who knows? As Mike and I have both said to each other several times, it's not so much what fly you're using, and a lot of times it's getting something that looks like food in front of the trout. So, you know, if you've squared off the tail just a little bit, I don't think it's going to kill it. Okay, let's go ahead. Next, we're going to tie in our tinsel. And in this case, because we're some of patterns call for a counter wrap, but I think because the tinsel is spaced wider than the peacock herl is wrapped, that we can get away with doing the normal wrap. So if we're gonna do it normally, I like to put it on the outside, on the side of the hook away from you, so that when you wrap, start wrapping it, you're not pushing the tail you're not moving that tail much. So put it kind of on, give it a couple good ties. And again, bring it back there. And let's go ahead and tie in the tinsel.
Looks like we're there, Joe.
Okay, so now we're going to take our peacock herl. And again, we're going to use the tips, not the base. The base is the white. The tips is where all the color is. We're going to break off that last ½ inch or so we have an even thing. I like to take these and have them tie them in so that they're about the length of the hook, because that'll help the body. It gives it a little bit more thickness. And then wrap your thread all the way up to behind the eye, leaving about leaving some space at the front so you don't crowd the eye. I don't have a. So let's go ahead and get that tied in. And then once you have it tied in, go ahead and wrap it. And again, like I said, I like to twist it. Let's start wrapping. Missed my spring. Again, hold it up with your right hand, put the thread over with your left a couple times, give it a couple little wraps in front, and then you can cut or pinch those off. And then like I said, I like to give it another couple quick wraps just to hold it in place.
Yep. If your hurl's really short, you can use Bob's trick and put a finger on it when you wrap it, or get some hackle pliers and grab them.
You could also use more hurl. So instead of using just 4 or 5, you could use, say, 6 or 7 strands to make it a little thicker.
Yeah, I think we're good now.
Okay. So now we're going to wrap nice and evenly, even wraps our tinsel to the front. Generally be about 5 or 6 wraps. And after you have it wrapped in place, go ahead and give it a half hitch. So at the next step, if we lose something, it doesn't come undone. You can give it 1 or 2 half hitches.
And now we're done.
Okay, so if you don't have a vise that turns upside down, you can pull the fly out, turn it upside down and retighten it. Or if you have a vise that will turn upside down, put it upside down at this point. Now we're going to take our hen hackle. And again, a lot of times partridge works real, a lot of people like to use partridge. We're going to put a little bit of a clump. We want it to go down just about to the point of the hook. And we're going to do a little bit of a loose wrap first to get it in place, another loose wrap. And we can kind of adjust it. Give it a couple of good wraps. Cut this tag end off. And then once you're done, put it back right side up. Pull these again. These kind of simulate the legs that we have on the fly. The gills probably more what it more looks like.
See a few of you still holding your thread very loosely. You really want to palm the spool of thread and pinch it there with your pinky and your ring finger maybe to keep that thread tight. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to get tight wraps with your thread, and your flies are going to be loose and fall apart. So really squeeze down on that spool of thread while you're wrapping. I think we're there, Joe.
Okay, so now we're going to take our mallard flank and we're going to strip the bottom fluff off.
We still have one wrapping, Joe.
Okay,
We almost got the beard on.
no problem. Take your time.
So we're good, Joe.
Okay, so again, you're going to strip a lot of that fluff off the bottom, get the nice little tip part like that. We're going to put it on top, keep it centered on top. Do that pinch wrap. Make sure it's centered and that it's straight on top. Give it a couple of good wraps. Cut this off. And then do a whip finish. So again, with this thinner thread, if you pull that whip finish tight at the end, sometimes so do 2 or 3. Don't pull it too tight. Do another whip finish. This one you can pull nice and tight, get it down, cut it. So go ahead and tie that mallard flank on.
Just one more whip finishing, Joe. Be just a second. There we go.
Okay, so now we want to trim this casing about 1/3 of the way down, between 1/3 and 1/2, kind of across. And so you can see that, I missed a little piece on the far side. And you can always trim it a little bit shorter if you don't get it short enough the first time, but you cannot make it longer. So there is the finished fly. Little head cement on there.